let me just say a few words before we get started. My name's Daisy. I work for BAE Systems, one of the cybersecurity directors, and I'm also a member of the British Chamber's ICT committee. And with all that professional backing, you would think that speaking to my children about cybersecurity awareness would be something I can easily do, but it is not. And actually, a lot of studies, the recent study by Kaspersky has shown that although 84% of parents worry about their children's online safety, on average, we only have 46 minutes in our child's lifetime on speaking to them about how they can mitigate the harms that they see online. So that statistic, that's what Nina and Michelle and Cyberlite are trying to break down. And since Cyberlite's inception in 2021, they have helped children and parents and educators all over APAC trying to harness those benefits and mitigate those risks. So we're extremely fortunate, Nina, to be able to grab your time because I know how busy you are. And I think that's more than enough for me. We'll get started. And as I mentioned, any questions from our audience, please shout them out. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for attending. And I always like to have a small intimate session as much as the large session. This same presentation we did to 600 people on Saturday. And as much as it's lovely to have that room and that breadth, sometimes the nuggets of wisdom or the sharing can be done in a smaller room. So as Daisy said, and I love to say, is we normally spend 46 minutes talking to our children about cyber safety online. If you go over, and some of you will have teenagers, and have a look at their screen time, they are definitely on it for more than 46 minutes a day. So actually you'll see that we're not really matching their risk factor. And hopefully today you will use up your 45 minutes here and we'll learn more about how you can enable, support your children in an online space. Just to give you some sort of authority to why we should be having a conversation at Cyberlite. Cyberlite has a footprint across the ASEAN region. And in the last 2 years, we have delivered workshops to 70,000 children in 6 different languages and work with not only Singapore MOE schools, we work with international schools and have traveled across Asia and sat down with educators to really understand what are the risks, what needs to be done, and have built products and services to deliver that. Now, this is an interactive session. Please feel free to interact if you'd like. You just scan that QR code. The reason I'd like you to do this is because we need to step into the world of what our children do and how they interact with technology. They are not passively sitting, they are interacting and they are giving information online all the time, positively and negatively. So if we navigate this presentation as your child navigates a presentation or a learning experience in school, you'll start to understand a lot of what I'm saying and why is it integrally important to put some of the rules and the nuggets in place that I will give you. So do scan this. There are just some slides that will give you also an idea of how others are doing. You are not alone when you are ripping that iPad away from your child for the 10th time. And sometimes it's really nice to know where is the landscape elsewhere, what are other children on. It is anonymous, so you feel free and feel comfortable when you are sharing your information. Now, why is it incredibly important to have this conversation? The first place I want to start is to understand when we give our child a device or we're giving them a piece of technology, we are doing it as a parent with our motivations in mind. We want them to be educated. We want them to be quiet. We want them to have something to do or be relatable with their peers. But as soon as you give that iPad or that computer away, you are actually inviting them to be seen as users. And now the person who's interacting with your child is not seeing them as a 5, 11-year-old or a 14-year-old child. They become a commodity. So advertising, data, subscriptions, how that they can utilize your child comes into play. And one of the things we need to realize is where our children are when they step into their devices is where we need to regulate and look at how we can support them so they don't become another consumer good that can be manipulated or used. So that's one of the things we'll deep dive into. So my first question is, do you know where your children are in terms of what apps is your child spending the most time on? Another reason I ask this question is I can then tell how old your child is. So please answer this question: what apps are your children mostly on? And I can then guide the conversation with your side of it. My next question is, how much screen time does your child have every day? Important here for the older kids to consider the school screen time as well as the screen time that you allow. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as I can see from that, we have a lot of young parents in the room with younger children, and there is definitely somebody here with a teenage child as well. A lot of what screen time has to do is with a magic age that I'll come to, the magic age of 13 that we'll talk about in a minute. But the reason I want you to really have a landscape of where your children is that when I speak to your children, I talk to them about their cyber bedrooms. Your bedroom is somewhere where you will only allow people who make you feel safe and secure into. And we need them to understand that to be true of their cyber bedrooms as well. And for us to be able to make their cyber bedrooms as secure as their real bedrooms, we need to know where they are. And we need to know these apps' motivations, these apps' risk factors, and what we can do about it as parents. At no point in this conversation am I going to ask you to delete an app from your child. Whether you take an app or an app is being used by you and your family is your decision. Each app then has safety features built into it or a risk factor as a parent you need to know about. Once you know about these things, you can lock up and make their cyber bedrooms incredibly safe. So, full disclosure, I will go down a very fearful, risky route of showing you what's wrong, but then we will look at the solutions and the tips to see how we can secure our children in a safer place. So a little bit of work here, write down all the other apps that your children are on, are requiring or asking for. And then when we're talking about the security, always relate it back to their landscape. I always talk about how my bedroom looks incredibly different to my children's. So when I'm looking at the risks online, I'm looking at it from a very different lens to what they're looking at it from. So we need to step into their world to really understand what their risk vectors are. Here, it gives you an idea of what are the key ideas and positions we need to look at in terms of their risk. Now, you can see I've done 2 line items. The one in pink is for tweens and the one in yellow is for teens. This is the magic age of 13. Somewhere along the line, technology companies have decided our children become adults at the age of 13. Therefore, if an app knows your child is over the age of 13, they put them on a different trajectory in the app to under 13 years of age. Rule number 1 when we're parenting online is always tell the app the truth about the age of your child. They then safeguard your child and put them in a different landscape to an adult. If you don't tell an app what the age of your child is, they're always in an adult landscape. For an example, if you think, okay, my child can use my YouTube because then I can see what's going on, the advertising, the nuance, what they're being fed will come as if you're an 18-year-old. So first of all, be aware of the under 13 years of age and the over 13 years of age. Every app as well will have a guideline of what age your child should be to use the app. There's some that will shock you. Now, YouTube, it will say out front, you need to be 17 years of age before you can use YouTube. And we'll deep dive into why they say that and what we can really do about there. There are other apps that will navigate, like Pinterest, you should not be using before the age of 13. Again, we'll develop into why that is. But these are the risk factors that we want to start eliminating. At Cyberlite Books, after speaking to thousands of children, speaking to educators, we developed our own curriculum. And the curriculum is based on what we believe every 7 to 17-year-old needs to know to become internet independent. So this is our internet independent framework. Each risk factor is looked into here, and speaking to children, this is what they most worry or are feared about and need the tools to continue and look into. So digital identity is how your child exposes their identity online. We have cyberbullying and abuse. In Singapore, cyberbullying rates are incredibly high, not reduced at global level at all. 70% of children see or have been cyberbullied. Online relationships, there's an amazing statistic. By 2035, 40% of the global babies will be from online relationships. So we are already in a world where your child will meet their significant other, mainly online. And so we need to give them the skills to enjoy that and stay safe. We can't be living in a world where we're just talking only about stranger danger. Of course, a lot of your children are very young, so that's okay. But how do we develop to internet independence where they can navigate relationships and feel safe? Phishing. Our children are more scammed than adults on Roblox and Fortnite than adults. And that's something we need to be aware of. They are the line to your credit card details. I often go into classrooms and say to children, can you tell me your parents' passwords? And yes, they will tell me your password because you've shared it with them. So I could get rich much quicker than I am right now. And then digitally media literacy in a world of AI, how do our children know what's true and what's not true? And privacy and security, and this is where Daisy comes in. Do we actually know how to secure our accounts? No, we don't, because I know your password. So these are the things that we need to look at. So let me ask you a question. What worries you the most about your child? Which one of these topics are most integral and important to you? Okay, I think that didn't really show up, but I'm sure that all of those are integrally important to you. Now, let me deep dive into each one of them by going through the apps that we know our children are looking at or prepared to use, and look at how their digital identity plays out in those apps. Each app, I'm going to tell you a different risk. It doesn't mean that app has that risk only. It's just to give you a case study of what we need to worry about, but go back to your children's cyber bedrooms and think, should I secure this risk as well in the other apps? The first one is TikTok. TikTok is huge. It's massive. It is also incredibly entertaining, engaging, educational. My daughter is always trying to cook something from TikTok, trying to get me to dance a challenge, which goes incredibly badly. But these are the things that they are engaging with. Now, why am I worried about TikTok? First, I have to give TikTok props. It is the one that has the most security settings on it for children. In fact, with my 12-year-old, I have now banned her from YouTube and asked her to go into TikTok because I have more visibility as a parent. So I will go into the benefits of TikTok as well as the negative. Now, TikTok is so incredibly good because of its AI. After playing around with it for a while, you'll see it delivers you content that you really want and really desire. It homes into who you are very quickly. So for me, it gives me a lot of cocktails, menus, sewing patterns, great. But for my daughter, who suddenly likes the filters, who suddenly wants to get healthy or diet, it puts her in a place where she's very vulnerable. She ends up in an echo chamber where everyone else also wants to be like her. And it will be very much, mummy, this is what the world looks like. It can force you down a world of pro-Ana sites or the need to look or over-sexualize yourself very young. That's just one example of a teenage girl. There are many other examples, and we've seen a lot of boys really navigate their way around Andrew Tate content, you know, looking at how they should be as men, and everything that they're fed looks like that. Now, I have a really cheesy line to get over this one. A family that scrolls together stays together. which means if you are in that app with them and you can manipulate their AI to be like, why didn't you also look at this? What about this as well? Then you are also still parenting while they're in the app. So that's really important. The other worry that we have with TikTok are the challenges. Over 130 children in last year have died from challenges on TikTok. This is because, as we know, if anyone's been a teenager, our prefrontal cortex has not developed. We are not patient. We do not think things through, and we end up in risky situations. So when this cinnamon sniffing challenge comes along, I may sniff cinnamon, which could then affect my respiratory system. I may do the plank challenge, which is doing an exercise, a plank in a risky situation. This became so dangerous, the Australian police force had to actually ban the challenge and make it illegal because children were dying from doing this challenge. You'll see many challenges that you and me would straight away say, this is insane, but that insanity isn't there without the critical adult eye. So by scrolling on TikTok together, you can see so much more. Now over to those TikTok settings. If you tell TikTok how old your child is, it will safeguard them. So a 13-year-old or under 13-year-old will never have their content shown to an adult. An adult cannot find them, and they will make sure that their comments are guarded and they're not left in a world of virality and toxic meanness. You can also ensure that you have parent control with an app on your own where you can see what they're watching. And this is why I navigated my child away from YouTube. I could not see what she was watching. YouTube had done the decision-making for me. TikTok allows you to have that decision-making power. So that's one thing to go and have a look at. TikTok settings are incredibly good and up to date. So put them on, and that's the only way they remain safe. If you don't have them on, they're not safe. The other big one is Snap. Now, recently, I heard a conversation with a child who was going on a residential camp and saying, I'm really scared about going on a residential camp because I'm not allowed to take my phone, and what will happen to my Snap streak? Now, the problem we have with Snap is that it has habitual behavior built into it. It wants your child to stay on there. It uses them as a commodity, and it wants them to interact. So a case in point, me and Daisy have now become friends on Snap. And if we snap each other every day, my streak has gone really high. But me and Tiber, my colleague up there, she and me don't really snap very often together. So we're not BFFs. Now, you can imagine how that plays out in the playground. We have children who wake up at 3 in the morning to ensure their Snap is up to date, and it becomes very habit forming, as is the map. Now, sometimes in Singapore, we don't feel so worried about groomers or pedophiles or people kidnapping our children. However, we don't have less of a problem with people geographically wanting to know where our children are or speaking to them. Many people who are reaching out to our children also know they don't want to be caught meeting your child, but they're happy to request your child to come for a video shoot for TikTok or to come and have photos taken so they can be viral too. So we need our children to understand that when they're sharing their maps, that it has to be positively motivated from them and not the other way around. When I go to schools from the age of 14 upwards, the most asked anonymous question is, what do I do about my nudes? Many people think that if you take a Snap nude, it disappears. There isn't a critical eye of thinking someone can take a screenshot. I know Snap stops you taking a screenshot, but there's third-party tools that allow you to do that. Or you could just take a camera picture from it. And so this has become a really important conversation to have with children really young about when there's a photo online of you, it belongs to you and you have to take ownership of it. So one of the things for younger children is always get them to ask consent before someone posts a picture of them. So even yourselves, you should ask your child, is it okay if I post this picture? It's very important they understand really young, they have ownership over that decision. In terms of any questions you may have, and I'm sure they're rattling around now, we can, at the end, there will be a moderation of questions, or you can put them in the Zoom chat and we'll do those later so we can keep on top of everything as they come along. Now, a lot of your children will be asking for Roblox, will be on Roblox. What's wrong with Roblox? Just to give you an idea, if your children do have Roblox, don't panic. 3 out of 4 children in America after COVID had Roblox. Its virality is massive. And at some point, your child will ask for Roblox. Now, why do we worry about Roblox? Let me explain the app to you and how it works. Roblox is like the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. It's a platform. Me as a game developer, not that I can develop a game, but let's pretend I can develop a game. I decide that I want to commoditize it on Roblox. So what I do is I host it on Roblox and hope that it starts to engage and make money. Now, am I a positive developer? Am I a gamer who positively creates content for my child? I may not be. And that's where we start to get Squid Games for children, or we get Kim Kardashian's sex tape as a viral Roblox. The other thing that we've created when making Roblox is a pedophile's playground. If I want to reach out to a child, how can I do it? We have created an environment very easy. My children do use Roblox, and every time they use it, there is always something that tries to get them to put on the chat feature and speak to somebody. They are always asking our children to put that chat feature back on, and 1 in 10 people on the platform trying to reach out to our children is an adult. So we need to be incredibly aware of our children having the knowledge before getting into Roblox to be able to spot if there is some ill intention going on. Phishing is a huge thing on this platform as well. Free Roblox vouchers. Can you swap your avatar? This is where children really do get scammed. So we really need to look at that as well. Never leave your children playing Roblox without adult supervision, because it's a very complex product. It's a very engaging, fun, and enjoyable product. You try and get your child to sell you Roblox, they'll sell it to you. But we also need to be aware that it's like the playground outside. You will not leave your child unsupervised in a playground. We cannot leave them unsupervised on a platform where there are so many users that they can engage with. So how do you manage these privacy settings and privacy settings that I'm talking about? When you go into an app, one of the things that you need to habitually do as well, download the app and go straight to the settings. If it was up to me, every app would be set up for a child, and parents and adults would have to go and put it in adult setting. But unfortunately, that's not how it is. So unless we go into the settings, we cannot do that. Now, Cyberlite has free resources on our website where you can see how to do that. Another very simple way is to go over to YouTube. Someone has always made a video which is up to date on how to put your security settings on each of those apps. One of the last apps I want to go into is Pinterest. The reason I want to go into Pinterest is it's very much in the news right now, and it's also just showing you that we geographically sometimes limit our children's risk factor to what's in popular news. Pinterest is being used by pedophiles for a very long time to engage our children. If your child is making a board up of ballet or beauty or, teen influence, they can reach out to your child. They can also take your child's picture, manipulate it, and there are many secret boards with sexy young girls, which are being passed around, and then people can see if there's a pattern of a vulnerable child and reach out to them. In the last month, Pinterest has been forced to now put an age restriction onto it to the age of 13. I still arguably don't understand how the age of 13 is a safe space, because having a child at that age is the risk factor age. So it's not a case of saying, right, you no longer will use Pinterest, but it's a case of, am I having an adult conversation about how it's being used? And does my child understand that something that is being used there can be used in a risky situation? So some of the tips moving forward are, as you may know, Cyberlite is very well known for its book, Ready, Get, Set, Connect. Ready, Get, Set, Connect is available to every school in Singapore for free, and every child receives a physical copy and a workshop, not as scary as this workshop, much more enabling. And then you and your child can navigate through that book. If your school has not engaged with us yet, please let us know. Otherwise, you can also download this on our website. Set up your child's accounts. I don't think I say this enough, but I'll continue to say it. And parent control apps. There is absolutely nothing wrong with putting in a parent control app. My suggestion is to do it when they're very young. With all parenting, if it's a part of your journey young, they will allow it to happen. Convincing a teenager that you're about to put a parent control app onto their phone really does not support them. They probably have ways to actually delete the app. My suggestions, if you have an Android phone for your child, Family Link is very, very good. Your children cannot download apps without your consent. The only problem is that it will not let you download apps that are outside of the age barrier. So it does a bit of the parenting for you. So sometimes you will be okay with an app, but Google has decided you're not allowed that. So that can be a bit of a navigation issue, but it's very good. And Apple, again, has its own parent controls that you can have a look at and set up for your child. If you don't have parent controls on your child's phones or devices, you are not in control. The technology company, the app is in control, and you have allowed that to happen. It's as simple as that when it comes to that. Common Sense Media is an amazing resource that is a non-profit in America. It's where you can go when your child is whining and saying, can I have this app? You can go over and have a look. It will tell you what adults think, and it will tell you what the child thinks. Two totally different things all the time, but you can argue it out, and play it together and see if it's something you're okay with having on your child's phone. Just stepping into the world of phishing a bit more, to give you an example of how we've seen phishing play itself out. Recently, we had a child who was 12 years old, who was playing on Fortnite and had made a friend on Fortnite in a gaming community. In that sense, they were talking about gaming, they developed a friendship, and within a couple of months, the friend had managed to find out enough information to infiltrate his parents' accounts and had taken all their money. Now, on so many levels, this became incredibly complicated. One, the child had been groomed to give away money. On the other side, the parents hadn't secured themselves or known what was going on, and so had left him in a really vulnerable situation. Roblox, again, is done incredibly well. Everyone's like, how is Roblox so big? I mean, the visuals aren't that exciting, as according to me. It's because it is very much a engaging gambling app of buying things and exchanging things and selling things. Now, when children are in charge of money, which is your real money, they will definitely get themselves into a mess if they don't understand that there are phishers and scammers out there. I always say to the kids when they say, oh, but it's free. Has anyone offered you $100 free when you're on the MRT? If that's never happened, I'm pretty sure there's a catch. So when these pop-ups come up, these freebies are there, or somebody's trying to do an exchange, give them the critical thinking skills to say, is this a scammer? My kids now love running over to me going, it's a scam, mummy, look at this scam. And they see it as a game in itself. So I now know that they're ready to roam with me flitting around the house, knowing that I can have a look if I need to. So this is the type of visualization that your children see when they are having a scam or given things that are too good to be true. The other thing when you are on Roblox that I will just point out is we've had parents who've had thousands of dollars taken out of their account because children don't understand it's real money. If you have your credit card attached, be very careful and make sure that there's an OTP attached to it. And make sure that they understand to block all strangers. Go back to that visualization of the cyber bedroom. Would you let this person into your bedroom? If not, you don't need them in your real world, but you don't need to be putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. And again, families that scroll together, stay together. Here's a quick question before we dive into the next topic. Where does your child get their news and information from? We're going into fake news. So where does your child get the news and information from? Thank you. Actually, 80% of our children now get their news from influencers. By the pure nature of their role, they influence our children and their thought process. They are more likely to be engaged on TikTok or Instagram to go over to the BBC News or the Guardian to find out their news. Now, our children need to understand that they need to critically think through what the influencer is saying. Neither me or you can change the fact that they will be getting news from influencers, and they believe that news is more important than what mummy says or the teacher says. So we need them to understand, again, back to this conversation, what's the motivation behind the influencer's opinion? Is it a paid partnership? Is it because they're in an echo chamber? Is it because they have a different viewpoint or they're sitting in a different geography? Especially with the rise of people such as Andrew Tate, where their influence on negative behavior or opinions, in my opinion, can start to influence your child. We need to really give them the skills to think, why does this person want me to think this? Why are they repeating it over and over again? And that's a very integral thing we do. We need our children to also understand how to source at home. We all did it when we were studying, always get a source. But now, because of AI and because of the way we get our news, whenever a child gets a piece of news, they need to think, is this true? Where did it come from? Can I find another source before I repeat it? We teach our children two things when we're talking about fake news: misinformation and disinformation. And they need to know the difference. So just so most of us don't know the difference, so I'll just download it so we can teach it to our children. Disinformation is when someone goes out of their way to create havoc or mayhem. So for a child, this could be somebody who sends a WhatsApp to say school's closed tomorrow, you don't have to go in. Someone's gone out of their way to create a piece of content that will create havoc. Misinformation is when you say, oh, Johnny just told me school's not open tomorrow, I'm going to tell everybody else the same thing. So that's the difference between the two. It's very important that they understand that they often get caught up in misinformation. Just because someone said it and you trust that person does not make it true. Now, statistically, where a lot of our boys get their misinformation from is Discord. Discord is a channel that became very big in the pandemic. When we are gaming or we are gamers, we cannot necessarily in that game have a conversation with our person we're gaming with. So Discord, and if you're my age, this is a chat room where you go into a chat room and you can chat with that person at the same time. We now call them server rooms. So your children can go into a server room with your friends and have a conversation. Now, we've seen from the news in the US, Discord is a place as well where information can get leaked. Recently, we had a lot of classified information leaked when a gentleman decided that he had to show that he had this classified material and show it to his gamer friends to win an argument. So there is a lot of exchange happening in these channels. Disinformation, misinformation being some of them. The other thing is fanaticism. There's a lot of fanatical thought in these channels, which we've seen. Just think, when I'm watching Bridgerton or I'm watching something online, I suddenly want to dress like them, look like them. I've just watched 12 hours of content. I'm well into it. And I'm having a Bridgerton party. Now, if you're on Discord and someone's got 12 hours of your airtime with their fanatical thought, with their language, with their inappropriate thought, it does start to manipulate our children into a direction. So we need to know who our children are in a room with for a long period of time and what the motivation is when they are in that room. Okay, I'm going to move on to YouTube, and I know this is a hot topic with the people we have on this call. So one quick question and then we'll fly into this topic. What type of YouTube content does your child watch? Thank you for sharing. I'm going to take you on a journey about YouTube, and then we will discuss what the issues are with YouTube. Now, YouTube themselves will tell you this is not a child's app. This is not an app for a child. It is not, because there is no human monitoring. Pieces of content are not viewed by a human. There's just too much of it being uploaded too quickly for them to promise that to happen. So it's an algorithm. Now, when your child is going onto YouTube, when my children were younger, it was very much because I needed some space, I needed some time, and I needed a coffee stroke wine. So I was like, here we go. There's an hour where I can silence them. And so what I did was I'd go over to Peppa Pig. That was well in at the time, and I'd be like, okay, you can watch Peppa Pig. I, as a parent, have made my decision. I trust the BBC. I find it very funny, and you can watch that because they're 15-minute episodes. Now, an average child, and you can do this if you have another device on your desk, if you go over and try the Peppa Pig situation, you are now a toddler and you've clicked away at least 13 times. You're now somewhere totally different. What has happened is your parent control has gone and YouTube's motivation has come in. Now, YouTube is motivated to keep your child engaged, entranced for as long as possible. So they will definitely end on something like this. Lulu for Kids, highly saturated colors, really annoying jingly music that keeps you in a trance and that puts your child into a passive state. Now, if your child, and every parent, if there's a parent who doesn't relate to this on this call, I'll be surprised, has had the moment where you've said, I'm taking your device back, and your child has looked demonic, like they may actually kill you for ripping that child's device away from them. That is because your child is in a trance-like state. They've gone into a passive thinking style. Now, if your children are gamers and you say, I'm taking that device away from you, they will argue with you. They won't be nicer, but they will have a good argument. My friend's still online. I'm in the middle of a game. I need 5 minutes. They are in a critical thinking state of mind. So when we're talking about screen time, we no longer in the cyber world talk about screen time in the way that we did. I will not say 2 hours of screen time is good for your child. Actually, psychologically, there are no studies to show more screen time or less screen time is good for your child, especially for teenagers. It was shown in the pandemic, screen time actually saved many people's mental health. So if you have an introvert or you have a neurodivergent child, they may find their world a lot more secure online. So I'm not having that conversation. My conversation is your child passive online on a trance, being used as a user, being used as a revenue, or is your child in control? Are they critically aware of where they are, and do they know what they're doing while they are online? If you are at Lulu for Kids, you definitely are in a trance. The other issues we have with YouTube is, as I said, it has no human monitoring at any point. So there is a group, I would just assume, of 16-year-olds who are always trying to hack the algorithm. An example of that, and I will show you a slide now. If you have children in the room, the next 2 slides are not for children. This is not a child's talk, so please avert your eyes. This was done with Peppa Pig videos, where it was hacked into the middle of content to see if they could get through. Now, I often go into classrooms of primary school kids. I have yet to meet one child who cannot tell me that they've seen something that worrying or disturbing on YouTube. Every child will tell you. I mean, it might be a clown or it might be a jingle that scared them, but that's not because they're out of their realm. It's because it's been put there to disturb them. There are images there that to a child, they may not know what's actually going on, but to an adult, we can see this is incredibly disturbing content. So the Elsa Gate scandal is one of the most famous ones that were reported on where this has happened. And though the report was quite old, we anecdotally know that this is happening time and time again. So if you are leaving your children in an adult world on YouTube without the settings on, they are open to seeing this. Moving on to cyberbullying, as you see, I whistled through all the topics. This is so we do get a touch point of what we should be having a conversation with, but each one of them deserves a deep dive all of its own. In Singapore, as globally, the big app that we have to really be aware of when we're talking about cyberbullying is Telenim. Telenim is huge here, and it was created for HR, where you could have an anonymous reporting on what your managers are like. As we know as adults, anything that is anonymous is incredibly dangerous. No one says anything anonymously if it's nice. They only say things that are bad. And so when it goes into the hands of classmates, it becomes incredibly toxic and becomes a cyberbullying app. I've been doing this job for 6 years, and Telenim may be the app I'm talking about today, but there'll be Sarah or a different app that plays the same role. Cyberbullying has become incredibly toxic. It has become incredibly mainstream. And one of the things I've noticed when we speak to kids, older teenage kids here, is they sometimes don't get the nuance of if somebody's posted something online, they feel they have the right to comment. You've put it there, so I'm allowed to tell you that your Charles Keith bag is not really a luxury item. They feel they have the right to have that communication. The same etiquette that we taught to our children offline does not feel like it's being taught online. So if you do go into your teenagers' WhatsApp groups, you'll see that the way they speak to each other is definitely not how they speak to each other in the real world. And so there's an escalation of cyberbullying incidents. Now, how does cyberbullying work at school? It starts in the field of digital drama. This is when something happens at school, I didn't like your skirt, and then somebody gossips about it online, and then it could die. Right? And then you could just navigate your child through the day and say, look, just ignore them. It's fine. Cyberbullying happens when it happens over and over again. And it could be your child is excluded from groups, being discussed in groups, or viral content is being put out about them, spreading misinformation, disinformation. It becomes very toxic. What we also see is some children try and fight back, and then they end up in a loop. It's very important that children know that they can report it to you. Now, I've seen the reason children don't report it is because, first of all, they try and deal with it themselves, which means they said something mean back. And then they're more scared that you're going to tell them off for saying something mean back. And they're like, you're going to see what I also said. So it has to be like, it's okay, base level. If you tried and it went wrong, we can still support you. Ask them to always take a screenshot and have the communication open that you can be supportive. In Singapore, we have a charity which is aligned very much with government strategy called SHE. And if you have a case of cyberbullying or inappropriate content that's gone awry, they will take the legal precautions to ensure that content comes down and your child is again safe. Here, a lot of laws are in place to support your child. And if your child has been doxxed or anything is happening, you must take it legally so your child understands what to do in the future. If a physical crime happened, we would happily go to the police. We need to start giving the children the tools to do this, because our children will not go through life without a cyber incident. It's just unfortunately never going to happen. One of the conversations we have with your children from the age of 7 is groomers. As I said, we can feel that we're safe here in Singapore. I know coming from the UK, I feel incredibly safe here. We run around, leaving our bags lying around and come back 4 days later and they're still here. However, groomers are not looking to meet your children here. They're looking for a photo or a video that can be manipulated into new pornographic material. So your child may never meet them, but may have sent an innocent picture over of themselves, and that has now created new images that they can sell or use. So first of all, if your children are young, have the cyber bedroom conversation, people with positive and negative motivation. Your children are older, they will start trying to speak to strangers if you know about it or not. So do they know the red alert words? If they're gaming with strangers, why are they asking where your parents work? Where do you live? Why are they saying that I know you better than anyone else? I have a secret. Why are they, is your child going off to a different room to have a conversation? Be aware of all these points and speak out when you see these points. And so how do we move forward and promote positivity? First of all, make sure your child has the right security set up, the right positive intentions, and know what is private and not private. Go through exercises of, would you tell people this in the real world? Would you not tell people this in the real world? Communication is the key to keeping our children safe. One of the things I have at home, I'm not going to say we're great at it, there's a cyber family pledge. So I'm going to say my husband breaks this more than we do. Do you bring your phones to the dinner table? Are your phones in the bedroom? Are you using phones when you don't necessarily need to? Make sure that your cyber hygiene is something that can be emulated. Are you using that same password over and over again? I know you are. And do you change your password with a question mark or an exclamation mark, thinking that you've actually fooled every hacker? If you're doing that, your hygiene is not great and you are not teaching it great as well. I'm saying this, thinking about myself a bit as well. So we can all correct these things. Watch out for things like doom scrolling. If you, and I also sometimes fall into this, or your children are scrolling through YouTube or are scrolling endlessly through TikTok, if it was up to me, you couldn't doom scroll, there would be an end somewhere. Are they now a commodity? Are they enjoying it, or are they now being utilized as a user? And it's no longer about them, it's about how they become a revenue model. Are they oversharing? Yes, they are. One of the scariest things is what our children are sharing and feel it's okay to share. Are we showing them that behavior, that it's okay to share? And we haven't put the settings or the safety in ourselves. Again, habit forming behavior. As soon as your child, and if in the cyber bedroom, you said my child's only on one app, that means they have become a utility to that app. We need our children to actually have a wider geography online, rather than being like, oh, my child's obsessed with Minecraft and that's it. That is a worry. It's become a habitual behavior, and there's something in that function that has caused our children to put themselves in a risky behavior. And we need to snap our children out of it and say, actually, there's many more things than you can do than being on Minecraft. And trolling and cyberbullying is something our children will face. I've seen it play out. Can we support our children, nip it in the bud early? Do we know how to navigate it? Your children may be the perpetrators. That does not mean your children are evil. It means your children have got themselves into a negative behavior online where they found some power. How do we correct that and make sure that it doesn't become a negative part of who they are? And watch out for that passive screen time. As much as we shouldn't watch, the whole of Queen Charlotte back to back, which we do, be aware that this is not positive for us, and we should snap out of it and have some critical thinking as well. And also sharing without consent. When your child wants to post those party pictures up or wants to share something, they have to ask all their friends if it's okay first. Again, this will start to shape who they are. When at 18 years of age, they're asked to share a photo, they have to really think, I have the right to say no to this. We need them to understand their rights in their cyber bedroom so they can critically think it through. That's the end of my conversation today, but I'm sure there are questions. If you do have any questions, and you are still in the AHA slides, you can add them here, or we can have them in Zoom. I know Tiber would moderate, as they may not all be on my screen. Do let me know if you have any questions or any observations or sharing. As we are a small group, you can share with each other as well. I can see the chat, there are two questions, but I can't open it myself. Is there?
Hi, Nina. Yes, so there is one question that has been raised, and it's in relation to Roblox. So someone has asked, if my child is abused, what can I do, and can I submit a police report?
Fantastic. Tiber, could you also share the link to She in the chat? So I'm really happy that we do have the support system in Singapore. Even if it's a small problem, go to She. They have a clinic which, and this is the bit that really excites me, has the ability to speak to the technology companies as well. So they can go out and control what's out there in terms of information. They will also support you if your child has really been emotionally affected by what's happened on Roblox. They will have counsellors and psychologists who can help them through the process as well. The most important thing is not to minimize the issue. What is in your child's online world is their real world. Your children do not think like we do. And I hate this conversation we still have, the digital world and the non-digital world. That is for my generation. For their generation, the digital world is their world. So we need to treat the case as we would if they were abused in the real world. It will psychologically affect them in the same way. The other thing is, if you have screenshots and evidence, it will support your case. So there's two ways to support your child. One is to ensure that they have the emotional support, and two, they have the legal support. The other thing is not to get them scared of Roblox, in terms of, I'm very careful. My children got Roblox when they were 12 and 13. So they did not get it young. Their 6-year-old brother does stand behind them many a time while they're playing it. So he's exposed young. But if your child's at an age where you feel, actually, the game was good for him, he just got himself into a situation and we just didn't know, play the game with him, get him back into an environment where he feels comfortable or she feels comfortable again.
Thank you, Nina. We've got a couple more questions. Someone's asked, if you have a teen or tween and haven't really done the safeguarding to date, how does one navigate the removal of freedom to put in those guard rails?
Yeah, this is a parenting question that I ask myself all the time, because sometimes we only come across like, how do we get our children off Pinterest once they're on Pinterest? So the thing to do is to do it as a cyber pledge or a family pledge where you all have decided to go through this. Maybe have a conversation and say, look, you know, I had this conversation about the cyber bedroom and there are so many bad actors that we're going to work out how do we stay safe again, and what would you like us to do, and what did you learn at school, and what would you like me to put into place, and make it a family activity. One of the things is children know exactly where they felt vulnerable online, and they are incredibly okay with us coming in and navigating and making them feel supported. You ask a child of 20, not a child now, but a 25-year-old, and they will always say, I wish I had more security in there. I wish I knew more. So I think if you just had a very open conversation with your child, they would be open to you putting that control on. The other thing I say to my children is, if I'm paying your phone bill, I have a parent control app on there. If you want to pay your own phone bill, go ahead. You know, we can work it out that way. My house, my rules. I now am more educated. I know that I want to put my footprint into the situation. I'm just, now I can see the second question here. How do you advise dealing with families at mixed stages of 16, 11 and 4? I am in that situation. As I said, my 6-year-old is always hovering around, knowing way too much from his sisters. So how we discover the cyber world, and how I discover the cyber world, is I license my children, and I will say to them, if you can answer these questions and you can pass mummy's exam, you get to go up a level. So we're always asking our children to become more independent online, and we want them to get to independence and have the critical thinking skills. So the more that they can prove to you that they have it, the more navigation they have. So when you have younger children as well, they can all have their own child account. So they're never accessing the same technology in the same way with the same visualization. So YouTube, your child of 16 can have a moderation level of explore anything. Your 11-year-old could be explore more, and your 4-year-old can be explore nothing. Right, they're in a really safe space. So most apps that they're all allowed on will have the ability for you to go in and put their age and let the app help you control it. As a parent, on top of that, what do you need your child to know before you allow them onto that app and allow them to navigate that app? Unfortunately, siblings will always show each other their phones. So that's a really difficult one. And it's also a case of a 16-year-old saying to them, make sure that if you expose them, that you expose them and say, look, this is not safe for you, or, you know, have that parent conversation, which is so complicated to have. And what tips can you share on helping the household with a mix of ages? I think that's the same question. And how do I stay on top of what's popular teenage apps now? So we have a newsletter that you can sign up to, where we will tell you what's in and what's not. It's changing radically all the time. Sometimes I walk into a classroom and they'll say something and I will be like, where did that just one come up from? So it's not just a case of we can Google it. Again, a family that scrolls together stays together. Your children will tell you what's there, and then it's a conversation of why has this become big. And there's some great newsletters out there from Common Sense Media as well, and you can stay abreast of the issues, the risks, and why these apps have become big out there.
Thanks, Nina. There are a couple of questions left on the chat. Yep. One of them is about a lot of energy on AI recently. Are there tips that you can share on risks and advice for children in relation to this? Okay, so AI, there is no, as I like to say, I'm a domain expert in cyber education. There is no risk expert in cyber education. AI is too early for us to really understand the risk and for us to really give everybody the skills to navigate that. The important thing is that we are all aware of it. We know our children will grow up with it. There's no point alienating them from AI or being scared of it.
I use ChatGPT a lot, so I understand how it navigates. And I think as a parent, we have to step into that world. And that's why I'm on our slides and I'm facilitating with what children use themselves, because we have to step into their geography and understand it to understand the risk. And the risk will develop itself out as we go along. The simpler things that we know now, misinformation, disinformation, editing of their photos, their videos. Our children are incredibly vulnerable from people faking to pretend to be them, setting up accounts that when they're 18 years old, especially if they're leaking information now. So one of the things I always say is, you know, I have parents who are like, well, all the stuff about my children's already out there. Why should I worry? Like their ultrasound pictures online. So why am I worried? First of all, if your child is 13, they're 5 years away from owning their own credit card, which means if you are a patient hacker, you just have to sit, watch their social media, their first school, their school uniform, their pet's name, their maiden name. You know, they have all the information to pretend to be your child. So we need to safeguard that. Same, AI will be picking up information about our children. They'll be able to speak in our children's voices at some point. We need to be giving them the safeguard and the knowledge of how to control their digital identity at the same time as accepting AI is coming. So I can't say I'm an expert, but there's some really good podcasts out there. I will recommend Hard Fork is a very good one. That's FORK, just in case anyone thought I said anything else. And they really challenge AI every week, and every week they're like, hang on, it's all changed. So that's something we need to be aware of. Are there any other questions?
There is just one last question, if we can squeeze it in. How can you decide or tell if a YouTube channel induces a trance or active engagement? Is it just a matter of parental discretion or taste?
There's three things I would look out for. One, who is the owner of that piece of content? If it's the BBC or if it's Kahoot, then I'm not so worried. If it's you know, school forever ... and they've got the types of content for everybody and anybody, their motivation's not great. If a video plays more than an hour and the engagement is 31 million subscribers, they've put revenue behind that to ensure that that's top and that they're making engagement and advertising spend. Someone like me who uploads a video on Cyberlite, I've got 5 subscribers. So my motivation is to put my content out there, but not to entice you to come for revenue. So that's another thing to look out for. Highly saturated colors or repetition in terms of jingles, rhymes, things that keep you only in your primitive thinking and no questions or no movement. Like there's so many things, as we all saw in COVID, that you could go online and you could dance and run around and interact with, and, you know, baby yoga. I'm not worried about that. But if it's like a running 2-hour, highly saturated video, high jingle power, or watch me play Minecraft for 2 hours, but I'm not really giving you much more than you can watch me run around Minecraft, you're in a passive primitive state. Not that your child can't be in a primitive state. Sometimes we all need that. We need to shut out, but how many of our screen time hours are that? So with my kids, they have screen time as passive screen time and interactive screen time. Passive screen time, you can watch a movie, it's done. No, do you want to learn how to do origami online? I can't teach you that. You can use YouTube to do an origami piece. Great. Now, just one last thing from me before I hand over back to Daisy is we do focus groups with parents all the time. We work here very closely with government agencies in Singapore and across the ASEAN region. If you'd like to be part of our focus groups, this really gives you, again, more of a face-to-face deep dive on what people are doing, what's out there. Please feel free to submit. You'd like to participate. You can email us directly if you don't want to do it here, and we can put you as part of the next focus group or on the newsletters which go out. This parent talk is also available quarterly for free, which we send out, and that's how we get 600 people on the call at a time. So if you would like your friends to be part of this parent talk at some time, again, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can make sure that happens. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Daisy, so you can go ahead and take the screen over.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Taba, as well, for your help with the questions there. Incredibly fortunate to have you for this hour. A massive amount of information that we got through. I think the parents that scroll together stay together. That's definitely one that's sticking in my mind, and the number of relationships to how you bring your kids up outside the cyber world, and just trying to relate that into conversation in terms of educating. You've given me my 2 key tips to push forward with my own children. So really, really appreciate it. Katrin, did you want to? Thanks. Katrin, did you want to flash up upcoming other British Chamber of Commerce events? So we've got a couple throughout May, and then our big gala dinner in October. I think tickets, record sale speed last year, I think all within a couple hours. So just keep your eye open for them coming available soon. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you soon at another event. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.